Thank you very much, our dear viewers, and welcome to the Citizens Chat Show, where we discuss issues that are important for you, the citizenry, and for our national journey as Uganda. Starting off 2024, we are, of course, experiencing a unique week where we are hosting several countries in the country, in Uganda. We just had a conference concluded for speakers in the Commonwealth. We currently have the non-aligned movement conference going on in Uganda as well. And of course, we shall have the G77 meetings. But are these meetings worth it for Uganda? We have seen a lot of work going on in preparation, including a lot of construction work being done in the last minute and a lot of preparations. Of course, Ugandans were also asked to make sure they smile for the guests in this period that we have. I don't know if Ugandans don't smile otherwise, but I found that interesting. So today we are here to discuss whether this summit, especially the non-aligned movement, and of course the other peripherals, G77, and of course the Speakers Conference, whether they mean a lot or they're worth it for Uganda, or do they just cost our country? We shall also discuss, of course, and begin with the legacy of Cecilia Ogwal, Honorable, who we lost today. It was a sad day, and we hope that very capable panelists here will be able to take us into probably their interaction with her, but also what they knew and who this person was, especially for the younger generation. But before we start, I'd like to introduce my guests for the day, and starting with the gentleman on the far right, we have Mr. Robert Ojambo from faculty, who is the head of Faculty of History and Political Science at Kyambogo University. You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. We also have Mr. Ochieno Joseph, U.P.C, Ideologue and media personality. You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, and good to see you again this year.
Amen.
Yes, we have Honorable Stephen Mukitale, who is a former MP of Bulisa, but also an advocate for national dialogue. You're most welcome.
Good evening, Civic Space.
Yes, and finally, of course, Dr. Bireete Sarah, who is the Executive Director of Center for Constitutional Governance. You're most welcome.
Thank you, and good evening, viewers.
Yes, my dear guests, today we lost, of course, Honorable Cecilia Ogwal, and one of the prominent faces in our national journey, especially those who have followed for the last 30 years. Perhaps in your interactions and time in politics and national discourse, you are closer to her than some of us, and probably have something to say that we could pick from her journey, but also that we can remember her for. And of course, for that, I would like to start with you, Dr. Bireete. Who was Honorable Cecilia Ogwal?
I first heard of Honorable Cecilia Ogwal in my senior 1 years, when the Constituent Assembly was sitting to discuss and enact or promulgate the 1995 Constitution. She was among the people that fought for political freedoms in this country as a member of U.P.C. And at that time, multi-party politics were under ban. But she was also a voice, a clear voice for the women's rights. So she's among the people that I have grown up admiring. Maybe part of the courage that we have is because we've grown up watching our Iron Lady, as she was commonly known. As a member of the women movement, we've lost a general. A general of the movement. We've lost a legendary woman whose brilliance, skills to articulate issues, but also courage and conviction put her at the forefront of many struggles. She also had a unique character that would, in a way, easily support issues of the common good. Unlike some of the people who take extreme positions, she would reach a time and say this is a national issue and stand up to that calling. I've appeared with her on many shows, talk shows, on several televisions. And she always tells me, especially the national broadcaster, she used to tell me and say, Sarah, whenever the national broadcaster calls, we must go, because there will be a time when private broadcasters might let us down and everybody will rely on the national broadcaster. So that was the national stature and how attached she would be to issues of the common good. We've lost a giant on behalf of the women movement. We've lost a giant. We've lost somebody on whose shoulders we stand on, who broke so many barriers. We hope that we shall keep her legacy going. May she rest in peace.
Yeah, may her soul rest in peace. Honorable Mukitale, what do you remember, or what can we remember about Honorable Cecilia Ogwal in this sad moment?
Condolences to the family of Honorable Cecilia Ogwal. My own condolences, I should even add from the Bunyoro Kingdom, because the first time I met her, it was very close to the family I was talking earlier of the Zaka Herus, the Kwamias, right from Nairobi, and the Zaka Herus and the Grenkias. But also in my private practice in procurement and logistics, I was doing work for the Alira Millers. I have been with her I found her in Parliament for the 15 years I was there, and I left her in Parliament. The country has lost a patriot. Honorable Cecilia Ogwal was known to market Uganda more than the NRM cadres. On matters Uganda, Uganda came first. Honorable Cecilia Ogwal was known to speak directly to authority, including to the president. Where his own ministers are fearing to speak, Cecilia Ogwal could stand. I can see already on the social media there is one which is going around. Say, these people are fearing to talk to you. They are putting the job, but for me, I give information for free. That is Honorable Cecilia Ogwal. I also, during the CA, I remember Honorable Cecilia Ogwal contesting against her president's directive. U.P.C was supposed not to participate. She's the one who was the voice who said, no, we must participate. And her performance was very brilliant. Honorable Cecilia Ogwal, if we are to give a standard, a bar of a legislator, it is the star. And if you take her as a bar, I'm sorry, 85% of our MPs will not qualify. 85 will not qualify.
85%.
So to be in that club, when I joined Parliament, these are the powers looking at. And I think U.P.C had some very good mentoring. But also Lango, the caliber of MPs, they are two boys, who have come from Lango, they are class apart. Ben Wacha. The Ben Wacha, the Lango team I've found in Parliament, I've worked with, they meditate now. But the ones which they were bringing, they were class apart. Patriots. Cecilia Ogwal, very articulate, very informed, as you all know. She still made use of, Parliament is very facilitated with budget office, with research officers, with legal officers and clerks. You wonder how an MP comes and speaks unconstitutional things, outside the law, outside government policy. Cecilia Ogwal would go and talk to the budget department director, goes to a legal officer, say, can you tell, I want this, give me a brief.
Yeah.
With that seniority, more than 5 terms in parliament, I think 7, actually from CA 93 to, we are talking about how many years? Almost
30 years.
30 years. But she knew the relevance of the technical people. So that's why when she was presenting, she was authentic. She was factual. I wish the parliamentarians and other leaders can learn from this decent lady. Uganda has lost, as Doctor has put it, a general in the women's movement. She spoke for the common person, common man. She spoke for the industry which we lost, like cotton. She always said, I don't know how many times on her answer, she got school fees from cotton. And so I always arguing with the president, why killing the cotton
Industry.
value chain? Because here you are dealing with this one, you are giving the money to this one person, but where is it from where it's being produced, the Januaries up to the end? So Cecilia Ogwal was a class apart. The country will miss her. And she gives the reason, some of us, to say that you can stand. Cecilia Ogwal, by the way, has been offered more chances by the president to become a vice president, to become a prime minister. I hope the president will come out and speak on these details. And she was never. So she has rejected transactional politics. She remained clear to what she wanted to do. May her soul rest in peace.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Of course, it means a lot coming from you who shared the corridors of Parliament with her. And right now, we'd also like to listen from you, Mr. Ochieno, as we, of course, mourn, but also celebrate the journey of someone who, when we're talking about U.P.C, I believe is also a general in that regard. But we'd also like to hear from you and the angle from which you view her, and we will remember her.
Yeah, my very sincere condolences. Yesterday, when this story broke, I was actually preparing a write-up around matters U.P.C and strategy going forward. But also, I was reviewing a conversation, a meeting I had with the 2 elders of the party 2 days earlier. And so this thing bangs onto my social media platform, as these days they do. And they bang very quickly, and you can see breaking news very quickly within a few minutes. Is it fake news, or is it not? So it's very clearly the case. I must say that my mood sank, and then coincidentally, 10 minutes later, I had a call. I had an exchange with an elder of the party, and this gentleman, usually very busy, very precise, old school, but he actually called me because he sensed that there was something going on, and he didn't even think about it from the Cecilia perspective. No, I had the privilege to work with Cecilia Ogwal, but first, of course, this is a general in politics, a general in public life, a general in civility, a general in social life. To the extent that she was the Miss Uganda Favors of the Nairobi University of the 1969, lest we forget, Team Beauty from Langwa of Uganda at the time and to date. And in 1980, we were talking politics before we came on air. She was, this is the unfortunate bit, she was a parliamentary candidate. And she lost in the primaries. And she lost twice, and it had to be redone twice or 3 times. But then after that, she was appointed Assistant Secretary General of the party. Now, unlike the Secretary Generals of some of these political parties these days, which are basically instructive offices for particular individuals, Assistant Secretary General, as you know, Secretary General, the job is a very powerful position. So she was Assistant Secretary General of U.P.C, and she did a clever job and a decent job. As a student in the 80s, I managed to go to U.P.C headquarters, and at the time, directors or heads of departments were really serious citizens of this country. But much more importantly, then came the NRA-UBS guys from the bush and the overthrow of the U.P.C government too. In 1990-91, very important, Stephen, Cecilia now tells me 2 years later, fast forward, to a meeting in London, and when Obote appointed her chairperson of the Presidential Policy Commission of Uganda People's Congress, and that was now the collective presidency of the party when parties had been banned and Obote was in exile. Chairman meaning first amongst equals, but effectively our de facto president in Uganda. And in my tribute to her yesterday, I suggest then she was the first, Sarah, the first woman, female leader of a major political party in this country. And I look across the continent, possibly the first. So that's extremely important. It is around those foundations within a year or two that she burst onto the national space, and hence the Iron Lady, no-nonsense lay person. Linking her to this story, important, to another revered citizen, the late Professor Donia Tiberondra, who was a colleague of hers in cabinet, in the party. Dr. Tiberondra told us, a group of young people in London, that when Obote appointed Cecilia as a chairperson, meaning in this cabinet, PPC, he said, and this is credit to him, said, this girl, we thought this girl, Obote has now appointed this girl, to be our chairperson. And then he said, very quickly we saw what substance she was really made of. But number two, most importantly, was Obote had to explain that the president was in exile. The vice president was in Luzira. Muslim Museveni should be ashamed about some of these things. And then the Secretary General was in exile. So in terms of seniority of the party, I'm using Cecilia Ogwal as a message to political party leaders and to young leaders how organizations, institutions work. So
she was the most senior.
She was the most senior, and Obote was not prepared to take anybody else, from her position, hence appointing her. But of course, we knew that she was also quite competent in her own right. She was the most senior. She qualified, took the position, and wow, she wowed the women's movement in this country, roaring as she did here. And for me, who then met up with her, abroad and knocking doors of embassies and missions and here, she would wow people across. So that was the Cecilia Ogwal. Of course, then the point Stephen mentioned, very important, the CA participation. Because political parties had been banned, U.P.C could not field candidates formally. But granted, U.P.C said that leaders were free to go onto the CA as individuals. Now, in her case, because she was chair of the Presidential Policy Commission, meaning effective leader, that is where the complexity, controversies came in. But she was let in. Fast forward, actually, it is basically that question why in 1996, when after the new constitution elections took place, personal merit elections, the decision to go to participate in parliament. Obote again say that, well, members are free to participate on an individual basis, but because you are the head of the party in Uganda, it will be as if you're taking the party in there. That's where the disagreement was, and it's part of my own first disagreement with her at a collegiate level, and of course then she moved on. Beyond that, most of the interactions I had with her, and you guys, you're really losing out. Are you young Ugandans? And my cameraman and our beautiful lady here, you guys are losing out. Sarah, I would call Uganda House every morning and sometimes twice a day. Cecilia, to me, she started calling me apparently I'm her son, because I became her son then. The mentorship you get from these people, the leadership guidance you get from these people is thorough. And unfortunately, today, most of the young people are losing many of the things in political party. And the Cecilia Ogwals, they will tell you as it is, and they would guide you, and they would instruct you as a trainee leader rather than as a favorite son of so-and-so. And so that's the Cecilia Ogwal. Granted, they had their disagreements, as you know, because it's on the record, when she was replaced by Dr. James Ranyarara as the head of the Presidential Policy Commission. Fast forward, I had the personal privilege, of getting involved with her, and surprise, surprise, which other legislator? Dr. Okula Epak, who's then MP for Oyam North. These vibrant guys, that cut group guys. So I met Dr. Epak in London with somebody else whose name I don't mention. So we had a conversation about them coming back to reunite with the party and reconcile with the president. I'm privileged to say on record that that meeting I committed myself to pushing the lead to the conversation with the president in Lusaka. Arrangements were made. Unfortunately, Epak didn't, Cecilia did. Then she returned, in a meeting in Lusaka. She returned to the party's Presidential Police Commission, and then she was appointed chairperson, Mobilization Committee. And finally, then, of course, then after that, I returned in 2005, and I served with her in the then Constitutional Steering Commission as joint commissioners. That's sort of our former end of it. But whatever it is, I have schooled it in a manner in which I framed that Cecilia is possibly the mother of women opposition politics in Uganda. And for that is a name and a credit that she really does deserve.
Yeah, thank you very much for that elaborate picture into her life. And over to you, Doctor. What can we remember about Dr. Cecilia?
I must give a disclaimer that this individual I'm going to talk about, I've never met her face to face. But I've always met her on TV, on radio, and in books.
Yes.
And that's what I'm going to describe. For those who watch parliaments in the world, I really consider the American House of Commons as the apex. When you're looking at value, you're looking at people who are talking about things they understand, and they are representing whatever ideology they believe in. In my view, some people may say the British or which one, or Japanese or Chinese, but for me, the American. I can spend a whole night watching. And sometimes I wonder, can we have this in Uganda? And my argument has been, no. And I've really been sympathizing with Cecilia being in that parliament. You find a person in a wrong place. I would want her to be in the House of Commons, because that's where she belonged. In fact, up to the beginning of this year, I didn't know what her qualification was until I met a person who told me that she was an OB with the Matia Kasaija in Nairobi studying accounts. I did not know.
Bachelor of Commerce.
But Bachelor of Commerce, but bias accounting. And I did not see much of the accounts in her. I used to think Cecilia was a lawyer. Either a lawyer or a political scientist. That's where I used to put her. And therefore, whenever Cecilia would pick a microphone to speak, I would want to listen what she's going to say. In fact, my last submission by Cecilia was when she was talking about Joyce Mpanga. And she corrected a lot of things which had been messed in parliament about the history of Joyce Mpanga and the women movement in Africa and in Uganda and so on. She was correcting people with authority. And I told a friend I was seated with that, you see what I told you? That this one is not supposed to be here. So it brings to us young people, I have been arguing, and I'm a proponent of this idea that not everybody is supposed to be in parliament. This idea of representation, this group, made Cecilia to be in a wrong place since the CA time, because I've been following. Cecilia had three things. Cecilia was a realist, a serious realist. She always talked according to the situation. Recently, the last time I saw her with Museveni on the same area was in Lango there, and Museveni had gone for his usual parish model things. And they had refused Cecilia to speak. And who was the MC? The current government chief whip. He was refusing Cecilia to speak. Cecilia walked to the microphone, and when the president saw her, said, leave Imat to speak. Imat means an old woman or Jaja to speak. And I thought she was going to, somebody has given you a chance. She spoke what she wanted to say. And that day, I remember, she was reminding the president to remain a Christian.
Mm.
And she used the Christianity thing. Said, President, I used to hear that you're a Christian. You ran away but came back. But you need to be a Christian. Christians are fair. Christians are honest. And those Christianity things. Two, Cecilia was... she was committed to her cause. I've been arguing with the colleagues that used to call, because I've been saying, they have been arguing that there is nobody who has been opposition throughout. And I would tell them, what about Cecilia? Then they would tell me no. But for me, I knew what was happening to Cecilia was some smear campaign from her party. You will forgive me, Mr. Ochieno. When Cecilia started disagreeing with the principal then, the Milton Obote, and I can tell you, Mr. Ochieno, Milton Obote, other than Nyerere, is one of my heroes. It's just, I number my people, there's Mandela, Nyerere, then Milton Obote. Don't accuse me, Ugandans, it is my choice. When she started having those disagreements in U.P.C. of conservatism versus progressive U.P.Cs. For her, she chose to be a progressive and moving with how things are. That's why he said she went to CA, and the CA would have lost out without Cecilia. When she saw that U.P.C was not a very good place, she went to FDC. And I had started seeing her, even in FDC. She was now moving. I was really thinking that next year, Cecilia would be in another movement. I was really imagining death has cut us short. Lastly, Cecilia has been an inspiration. You know, some of us are male, but you would want to be a Cecilia.
Yes.
There is a song which used to sing when we were growing up by, I've forgotten the author, but the song was Cecilia. That song, when it would sing,
Yeah, you are breaking my heart.
you are breaking my heart.
Did she break your heart?
No. People would imagine that lady is around. So one time, that song was played in a party, I think a parliamentary thing. Children danced along because where I was, I saw people dance. So she was an inspiration, a hard person, sometimes very hard, but also very flexible. She was like a chain. You know, a chain is sometimes hard and sometimes flexible. She was like that. But what really inspired people that she was factual and honest. You know, in Uganda, there are very few honest people. There is a time when they used to say that her Lira Millers was supplying UPDF. And she came and defended. She came one time and said, you people are accusing me. This thing I was not given because of favor. And it is not going to change my thinking about NRM. So if you think so, go and remove or what have you.
And I can add, it was the most organized miller.
Yes,
because
then
I shipped the equipment from out and installed it.
Of course, later it was a fault. You know, in this Uganda, when you don't support the government, things are fault. Now it had almost collapsed. So it was very honest, and above all, for those who are patriarchal, male, female, she transcended that division. She outshined many male human beings that have been on this earth, and therefore you would never minimize Cecilia because she's a woman. You would just have other problems with her. May her soul rest in eternal peace.
Wow, thank you very much, dear guests. Those are strong words. At least she held the government to account if her accounts was ever questioned in any way. And
that was Sarah in budget committee.
Yes, she was
Sarah
very strong
in budget giving direction.
Maybe
and that's where her accounts was.
Did she leave like a book or something like that?
I'm not sure. Not that I've seen.
Maybe just collections. And I think that's the challenge we have as academicians. We have been very detached from politicians. And you know, writing is not everybody's talent. But I think as departments in universities, we need to, especially my department, parliament. I think we need to come up with a way of this. We can compile
Encourage.
for
Can
them.
you start with me?
We
I'm
can-
very much interested in
Oh,
documenting myself.
Yeah, we can compile for them because that's what we are trained to do. We can compile for them and put together. But some of these people also sometimes don't want their information to come out. But I think her family is still there. For instance, I went to where Obote is buried because I told you he's my hero. He's my hero here. So I was talking to Akena on how we can make that place an important place. Because Obote is not a son of a village somewhere. This is a very important person. But the family has avoided some of us. They don't even want to speak to us. And I wonder why. If you go to Ghana, Nkrumah's grave is a museum. When you go to South Africa,
They are now
Mandela's
almost finishing the Nkrumah Presidential Library.
Yes. When you go to South Africa, Mandela's grave now, and before even the grave was there, Mandela Museum is one of the biggest museums in Johannesburg and every town where he had. So I think people like Cecilia, not to lose and to encourage our girls and young people who are growing up that there are some Africans who are good. I think we need to do something, and as you have asked, a book would be one of it, but another one would be a monument somewhere where people can, either as a museum or something, for people to go and read about a person who is fighting for freedoms. Because that's what I forgot to say. Cecilia has always been struggling for freedom.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we hope more and more of those come. Normally we attend some of these memorial lectures and items like this. Yes, you had something.
No, I think just very quickly, since I have the privilege of leadership under her, that the point is about the books is very important. And this conversation cannot just go because of Cecilia Ogwal, the name. Part of the conversations we had, and I actually had with her, was this thing about, ironically interesting, very long time ago, mentorship of youth, for which she was hailing Old Milton, and we're just challenging mentorship of younger people and younger women. And she made a little bit of a concession that she felt she was not doing enough on women, but I will not go into too much detail on that, talk about some circumstances where we are. But I must say that I was thinking about this question of the books. As it happens, I have suggested actually yesterday as part of the reaction that I was procrastinating for the last 2 years, but particularly the last 1 year, wanting to go and sit with her, not only to cleanse some of our contextual historical thing, but maybe to clarify certain things for my purposes, knowing the older Milton and the Tiburondos are gone and here they are, but also including their own perspectives outside the political hotbed in clarity. But why really for posterity to come? And for that, I can't say without a specific thing that not only did I used to manage her itinerary whenever she was in UK formally, but most importantly, one thing that goes for her, it is because of her that I came to know about the existence of a church called Elim Pentecostal Church somewhere in South London. Cecilia made sure whatever arrangement you made with her, but I don't think I was then as really necessarily religious. Because I think at the time I could pass many Sundays for the struggle.
You're like Museveni.
No, don't. There's no such thing.
To baptize your children.
But no, that's very important. Cecilia, whatever arrangement you did, when it comes into the Sunday, her first slot was this thing about the church thing, and it was extremely important. And her credit must not go into the record. But of course, notwithstanding, we had all other issues which I'll have conversation about, and it's a bit unfortunate about the question of the books. Issues being raised by my brother about some of the internal contradictions of the party. Some of them are established facts that we have privileges of, but when is the time to have some of this conversation in an open and objective way?
Thank you very much. And our dear citizens, of course, you've heard about the person that Cecilia was, and we hope that as citizens of Uganda, we all emulate and build on that to be better citizens. I believe with most Cecilias, just even 10, Uganda would really move far, and we hope for more and more blessings.
8 MPs of Cecilia, you don't need 500.
Yes, and starting with you, Honorable, our dear guest, as we move the discussion to the pertinent issue, which is, of course, the Non-Aligned Movement Conference, the 19th, which is being hosted by Uganda this week. There's been several questions on social media one of the things people quickly noticed was the sudden rush to arrange the city. We joked at the beginning about the Minister of National Guidance asking Ugandans to smile in spite of all their problems for the guests. And a lot of things. I think vehicles were also withdrawn from government to make sure the event goes successfully. But again, it's something that Uganda is also proud of, to be able to host. And to some, maybe a show of the progress of Uganda. So opinions may vary, and purposely why we have this discussion today, to see is the non-aligned movement, the conferences that we are having, of course, the Speakers Conference, then the G77. What does this mean for Uganda?
Let me congratulate ourselves as a country for hosting the second biggest international organization next to UN. We used to study about the non-aligned movement in the United Nations, in international relations, international trade, and diplomacy. Of course, the history of non-aligned movement from the days of fighting decolonization, that has been achieved. But in a global world today, there are much more reasons to keep ourselves together. In the days where we've just recently had COVID, we are pursuing SDGs. There is increasing terrorism challenges. You've just seen what is in Palestine and Israel. You've seen what is in the Soviet Union. But most importantly, it was a voice, an alternative voice to the UN, the NATO after World War, so that the other word was South-South cooperation. So it is more relevant today than it was even during Cold War. More so at this point in time, when we have challenges which require a multilateral approach. Climate change issues require multilateral approach. You will also realize that the new international economic order, what we used to call the world order, is about positioning yourself. Now I'm coming to Uganda. NAM is 2 weeks. First of all, you can even congratulate the other speakers conference. We have NAM plus G plus 77. Now the G plus 77 should also, why is it a side event on NAM? Yet the G77 was a caucus of the UNCTAD, the UN Commission for Trade and Development. So because of those negotiations, they felt that the South-South cooperation, who were at that time exporters of raw materials, who were the less developed countries, required a caucus so that they can get a position. Now, in international politics, posturing is very important. Positioning is very important. So having congratulated ourselves, the Foreign Service Ministry and all those people, President's office who have worked on an event, what matters is how you position yourself. I must also make it very clear. I must start by thanking President Idi Amin. When President Idi Amin caused OAU here, he left a permanent infrastructure. That is the Nile Mansons, which they call Serena. The first Chogam, when it came, you can have another debate, being Sudir owned or 50% Uganda government, and whether it's profitable. That's another debate. But in terms of preparedness, having gone through Chogam, lessons would have been learned on how best. So this panic shouldn't have been there. But when you have a wedding in a family, you don't say the brother-in-law delivered a very small bull who gave him money for a bigger one. You don't say the one we sent to bring the dressing didn't bring the function has to take place. I just pray that this time we don't have the Chogam scandals where vice president and others were wanted immediately after the function. I also want to say Some people have very short memory. You know, we have a lot of politics of deception. People may not even know that Entebbe Airport was the biggest by independence
in Africa. Yes.
That by 1971, Uganda had more arrivals of tourists and visitors than Nairobi. Because of the scandals which happened during Amin's time, a lot of these international conferences shifted to Nairobi. The tourists shifted to Nairobi. Now Tanzania, from COVID, the Magufuli miracle, if you're not careful in the next 5 years, will go beyond. Yet Nairobi has become an international conference center. All these, a lot of UN offices are in Nairobi. Now, in Nairobi, they don't have this panic when they have an event because it is routine. So I am now talking about choice. We call it in economics industrial policy.
What about Rwanda as well?
I'm coming to that.
Yes.
Can we be intentional and say we want to make Uganda an international conference center? Addis Ababa has been, because from the days of OAU, Addis Ababa has been the headquarters, but also the UN African Commission is also in Addis Ababa. So we have all been going to Addis Ababa. Now, the industrial policy I'm talking about is being intentional, that you want to make Uganda an international conference facility. Let me also thank the UNDP resident rep. If you listen since this NAM started, the best speaker about Uganda at Sheraton at the East African Investment Summit was the UNDP lady. And you wonder why a UNDP lady speaks about Uganda more than all the ministers, more than all the exhibitors. In her speech, even Jessica Lupo, when she was representing the president, she had to admit that the lady is really marketing Uganda. Now, what we are marketing, the source of the Nile, Pearl of Africa, those are God-given. No wonder the Minister of National Guidance says you must smile. So that you see more God-given. What makes you a destination? If Dubai, the Emirates, and Qatar chose to use their resources like Iraq did to attack Kuwait, they wouldn't be hosting the World Cup in Qatar and all these international conferences and films being launched in Dubai and Qatar. It's a choice. So we have to be intentional. We have to be deliberate. My good friend Narendra Modi, in 2007, I prophesied should become the Indian Prime Minister in Gujarat, came here and gave us a convention center in Nijinji. It was blocked by the mafia. They say there is a private sector coming for that. India has said, and a member of NAM, that as India government, because Gandhi's ass was put in the Nile, we are giving a convention center. Who are you to start again saying, we shall look for you another place? And in that confusion, COVID came, the project is nowhere. So we should have as many conventions, and that's why I'm bringing in the Rwanda case. Rwanda has intentionally made itself a destination, even for high-end tourism. Rwanda, in a very short period, Rwanda left here in 1994. The Rwanda leadership, I'm sorry to use that. In diplomacy, what is supposed to say our children, we say our brothers. That's a more diplomatic. They have now more chain hotels than Uganda. Their convention center was done long ago. Now, I want to juxtapose the two cases. Whereas these conferences are 7 days, Chogam was 7 days, it left an impression. It gave us the preparedness. In procurement, we talk about proven performance. The OAU was also for a few days. The NAM is 4. But a lot of other things which I want to talk about later will come in long term. But before I go there, I want to show you that how this country is a country of extremes.
Just
visitors,
because we are going for a break. So.
Visitors for 7 days, for 10 days of Chogam left us that conference. Visitors for NAM for 2 weeks, including G77, has left us a facility. In oil and gas, which nobody is discussing, I have 12,000 beds for 5 to 7 years, 25 breakfasts, because not everybody stays in the camps, 25 breakfasts, 25 break teas, 25 lunches, and 12 suppers without even a skies protea being left in the place, in temporary containers on the recoverable cost of government. But so that I give a plus to these organizers. But the looting is happening the other side, because the money we are spending in oil and gas, we should be having linkages. We should be having about 50 chain hotels, which again the Congress gave us under the UDC, the Chobes, the Paras.
But what do you say about the roads, the airports?
In now,
Europe?
For me, I'll come that in the second phase. For me right now, what I want to, the point I was hammering is that I want to thank the group which has organized this function. I hope they are looking. It's not enough to say we have done exhibition, we have brought visitors. These deals the meetings must translate into agreements, and will not be foreign service. I want the Ministry of Trade, Industry, Agriculture, water. I see them absent. Like I've told you, if the tourism was in oil and gas, water was in oil and gas, we would be having chain hotels. But people have made themselves, UNOC and Power have said, we know everything. They wanted to do roads, we stopped them. They wanted to do land acquisition, we stopped them. To bring UNRWA in place. So government does not operate. I know it is now very easy for the guys who are working. I've seen the guys in charge of this project. I have met them earlier as State House workers. I've met them earlier as PGP. I've met them earlier as former MPs. I've met them earlier as President's office. I've met them earlier. That's the class. They know each other. But I would want them really to work with government, all ministries, because this is a multifaceted. You need an integrated approach, multi-sectoral, interministerial, so that you know trade negotiations of UNCTAD are not done by foreign service. It's Ministry of Trade.
Yes.
I was actually, one of my disappointments was the Minister of Energy saying, when you have all the refinery owners in the world coming to you, and you say, for the refinery, it's a done deal. In Uganda, they call it Gadibengali. Why would you have not yet told us
Honorable, we have a
who competed for refineries? What is he giving us? Is the industry park coming with it? Then you say, this one, refinery, no, I already have a deal.
Yes.
This is a chance for Uganda to market a lot of other areas. We should look at the trade deal, should look at the technology transfer, we should look at, we are choking with expensive money. Should be talking of getting us cheaper money. There are so many areas. The opportunity is big. What matters? Are we positioning ourselves well to take maximum advantage
of the opportunity?
Of this opportunity.
Right. Thank you very much, our dear viewers, and our guests there for that elaborate this insight into what the Non-Aligned Movement Conference means. We are going to go into a brief break. When we come back, we shall have our dear doctor here, academic, giving us a bit of the historical context as well, but also listening in from Mr. Ochieno and Dr. Bireete, whether they also join in congratulating Uganda on hosting the Non-Aligned Movement, among other issues, of course. Thank you very much. Stick with us here on the Citizens Chat Show. We shall be back shortly.
National Water and Sewage Corporation is committed to providing cost-effective, clean, safe, and reliable quality water and sewage solutions in urban centers across Uganda. National Water and Sewage Corporation reaffirms its commitment to 100% service coverage, geographical expansion, infrastructure development, water quality, pro-poor initiatives, customer care and stakeholder engagement, catchment, and water source protection. Be a water hero. Pay your bills to zero balance. Report all leaks, busts, and illegal water connections to enable us serve you better. Reach us through our toll-free numbers on 0800 200 977 or 0800 300 977. You can also communicate with us through any of our online platforms or visit the National Water and Sewage Corporation office nearest to you. This message is brought to you by National Water and Sewage Corporation.
Thank you very much, our dear viewers, sticking with us here on the Citizen Chat Show. Of course, we are getting deeper into the insight as regards the non-aligned movement conference that we're hosting, but also the G77, which our dear Honorable mentioned that is something that was birthed by the UN to create South-South relations. Before we go into the opinions as regards the event itself, Doctor, we have the privilege of having you here. Is the non-aligned movement still of relevance? We know this is just the 19th, something that happens periodically. And like Honorable tried to allude, we are in a world that is continuously changing. Right now, we also have a competing body, the alliance between BRICS. We have the BRICS Plus, which is almost a similar polar bloc, though it's not South-South, among other multilateral and geopolitical relations. But is the non-aligned movement something of any significance anymore in the 21st century? You're welcome.
So much so, Mr. Okot, the non-aligned movement, as my senior colleague said, is something that is still very relevant if harnessed and used properly. Because let's look at how this thing came up. This thing came up as a balance of something that had taken place in the world after the Second World War. There was that bipolar relationship between the United States and her allies and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, or Russia to simplify matters, on the other side, and her allies. Of course, there comes a chance and Yugoslavia breaks off from Russia under Joseph Tito and as the president, and therefore it was a survival. They were looking at how could they survive in this polarized world of capitalism versus communism. So at the end of the day, he managed to mobilize other independent countries who had gotten independence, like India, because India had gotten independence in 1947. Then Egypt was the first country here to get independence. Then Ghana, and so on and so forth. And therefore, they formed a five-member committee, which had the first conference or summit in 1961 in Belgrade, and declared that for them, they are not going to either ally with the NATO or Warsaw Pact in this nuclear war situation that had developed in the world. Of course, Uganda became a member of non-aligned movement in the second conference in Cairo in 1964. And I think later in Zambia, because Zambia was the first sub-Saharan country to host the non-aligned movement, they strengthened the first government of Uganda, the U.P.C. government, were very key in these things, and then later popularized more by Idi Amin. Idi Amin was really a good support of non-aligned. Of course, then the major issue was sovereignty, peace, democracy, and a number of things. But more so peace, because people like Kwame Nkrumah, in fact, in Kwame Nkrumah's thinking, he thought that the world should be without an army. He thought that the creation of an army is what creates war, because Nkrumah used to argue that if you want to create peace, then prepare for peace. Prepare for peace. Don't allow any chance of war. So in Nkrumah's thinking, he wanted a Switzerland sort of arrangement where there was no army. And therefore, they were fighting the nuclear thing. And because of his voice, Nkrumah did not last long as a president of Ghana. The Cold War ate him up. And many presidents who thought like him in Africa, the Cold War ate them up. Many of the presidents who survived then were presidents who were supporting capitalism. The likes of Bokassa, the likes of Mobutu, the likes of Kamuzu Banda. People say Amin was a dictator here. For us, when we are researching, there were more serious dictators. Kamuzu Banda, Bokassa, those were terrible people. They were not anywhere. Amin was not anywhere there. But of course, Amin, why he was so much hammered, it was because of his stance on NAM and other related things. He was hammered so much. You can imagine this president who was hammered for 9 years had managed to survive
against Israel.
If he had not been hammered to that level, and that's what even made him even more hostile. I don't think he was a hostile man. So NAM had now to change after all countries had independence. The sovereignty is there. The maps have been drawn. I think that's where now Honorable was talking about. What are the issues today? Now NAM, like any organizations made up of Africans, has suffered the problem of leadership. The leadership in NAM has not been very good, with the exception of the Titos, the Nkrumahs, the Nerus, the Gamal Nasser, and others. The leaders who have come in have been so much interested with the power than building their countries. For example, if you saw Yugoslavia under Tito, had one thing to empower third world countries. For some of you who were alive or who had seen, we had here vehicles known as FAB, F-A-P. They were brought by Yugoslavia and distributed in third world countries. Most of the technical centers in Uganda, technical, where people go to do this small course, were supported by Yugoslavia to create them. Because Yugoslavia believed that African countries or third world countries cannot develop through high power capitalism where there is huge industries, because you cannot compete. So they believed in where people can do small things that support people's lives. And even the hospitals that were constructed later under Obote's regime, if you check, Yugoslavia played a very big role. India joined. You remember the Tata lorries, where the lorries that were for produce, for marketing, and what have you, many of them were given through the loans that were given by India. And the Hero Bicycle, Mr. Ochieno, we used to say when we were kids that His Excellency remains Obote, hero.
Amen.
No, but that was for the bicycle, not right now. Those bicycles,
They even thought he was a shareholder.
those bicycles changed. Those bicycles changed the society in Uganda. For example, where I grew up in Jinja, for a person to qualify to marry, once you bought a bicycle and a radio, there was a radio known as Sound Solo. Those two. If you had those two, they would tell you now you are ready to marry, you can have a family. Of course, that was a really joke. Of course, you must have had a house.
But they had cash crops, remember?
So NAM was very relevant to the local person through those interactions. They may look small if somebody is bringing transport things here, is bringing small machines.
But what about today?
Today, there's many meetings in the world, including AU, is a place for leaders to congratulate themselves. The ones who have won an election last year, the one who has managed to carry out a coup. There are very few things that you see these people resolve out of these meetings. I am waiting to see which resolutions will be made in NAM to impact on the common person. They have been affected by many of the leaders, as I said when I was beginning. Their objective is not to build the people. They only use the people to maintain their power. I'm not saying the one of Uganda is like that, but people can imagine. And because of that, they don't cater for the needs of the people. They only deal with the issues that can make them popular. For example, I've listened to many NRM commentators. They are saying that NAM has given us a leverage as NRM. Now we are going to be a popular party. I say, look at this one. That you want to make a party popular and you have to hold the NAM. You should hold the NAM when you have agenda. What are you going to sell to NAM to make you are going to be a president, a chairman for 3 years? What are those things that Uganda has put in place? These are things that we should be knowing. That for us in Uganda, in this 19th conference, after the end of it, we want A, B, C, D, so that we keep monitoring and looking at these things. But as we talk right now, we have the general objective of NAM. I hear in this conference they are dealing with the issue of Palestine. They are dealing with the issue of Security Council for Africa or third world countries, and us growing together. But us growing and prospering together is amorphous, is ambiguous. What is that growth? What does it involve? Does NAM going to help us to increase the literacy rate? Is NAM going to help us to improve on our hospitals? Is NAM going to help us to improve on our infrastructure? Is NAM going to help us to increase on our productivity or in our agro-based products? Nothing. I'm not hearing anything. They're just saying we shall harness it. But you can't harness what you don't see. It's like chasing somebody in the darkness. So we needed people who outline. What surprised me, he talked about a good team. This team is led by a permanent secretary. A permanent secretary. And deputized by an ambassador, a diplomat. I think countries don't run like that. So, how will that permanent secretary be answerable to the minister or to the cabinet? The team which is organizing NAM, the chairperson, the chairperson of the organizing committee is this lady who was in the State House, is a permanent secretary. Then the deputy is Ayebare. Now, cabinet is where they do policy. Cabinet of Uganda is the big policy making body, then followed by parliament. So how will the prime minister now go to Nairobi that please can you put this on agenda?
I think there's a parallel body.
I don't, and that's why you see majority of the ministers are just on TV stations and radio stations to popularize the thing. But when you ask them on the sideline, they say, the CV man, I don't know. So a country is not run like that. For example, the minister for foreign affairs, other than just going to open the conference and speak very nice English and put a good appearance, what is his contribution? And when you ask him the nitty-gritties, because it should be the one, the minister of trade, the minister of tourism, trade and tourism, the minister of agriculture, the prime minister, the minister of education. When I was growing up, my friend Ojok, children would be now there entertaining NAM guests. And for me, I used to think that entertaining is just entertaining. No, those children get involved. They will never forget such a thing. I participated in NAM conference, and therefore they understand it. If you go on the street and you ask people about NAM, 10 people, 10, I want you to carry out, I've carried out at least 2 studies, out of 10, only 2 know what NAM is. In fact, in Kampala here, people are saying it is a short name of female names in Uganda, Namu, Kasa, Nawat, Mbuzikami. So it is really very bad. Finally, the academics, the academia. Now, you see why the Titos survived and managed to succeed. The Kwame Nkrumahs, the Nehru, the Gamal, and those early leaders of NAM, they were very academic. There was a way this would have been debated in universities, in schools, to generate something from primary school up to generate what is the youth feeling about it. What would be the feeling about NAM and the women emancipation in schools? There would have been a debate. And therefore, groups would now be presenting to NAM that for us as female academics, this is what we expect from you. As youth, This is what we expect from you. What are they taking to NAM? Some exhibitors, some they have painted some people to show what you are trying to describe. Cynical things. Then the worst thing is the ad hoc preparation. For example, Joke, we were promised that NAM is going to do miracles for Kampala potholes. I don't know whether you have seen any difference. If I was traveling the other day up to this place, Kansanga, the thing is still ramchackled, and now they are not passing the guests there. They are passing them through the other bypass road. The town is the way it was. You remember they had to get some money and give it to the engineering brigade of the UPDF that it was going to improve our roads. Has it improved them? It is a scandal.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Unfortunately, I've run out of guests to congratulate or praise Uganda for for the dam. I was banking on you because now I'm left with Mr. Shendo and Dr. Bireete. But Mr. Shendo, just don't you think Uganda has been quite an exemplary member of the non-aligned movement? I mean, the president famously hosts people from all sides of the world. We had the Iranian leader here. We have had Western leaders here, Indian, Russian, all types. And just in the spirit of where this all began, that we negotiate with anyone, but it must have been a negotiation from our stand. Do you think Uganda's been that kind of non-aligned member or succeeded at least at that?
May your star in journalism continue to grow, and hopefully the next time a U.P.C. government hosts the non-aligned movement in Kampala, that you become the star broadcaster that is
that will be an
anchor that will be privileged to on the sidelines interview the major founding leaders of NAM across the world.
Yes.
Because actually that is shambolically not true. The non-aligned movement, as has been suggested by my colleagues, primarily founded strongly on an ideological sense and purpose of independence, and two, therefore, also founded very critically on the idea that nations, in this case, nations that were not aligned to the West and nor the East, and that were not prepared and not willing, to be sucked up to what London and Washington do, or in this case, Moscow or perhaps Beijing do, independently focus on the priorities of developing, growing, and protecting their nation states in sovereignty for their people. Stephen has suggested that, unfortunately, those leaders these days are substantially in short supply. My brother Robert has quite clearly told you that, well, it is a messy one. Do you know the way he presents it? If you just clearly talk the pothole thing, it brings it all. But number two, if you then go ahead and talk about the youth thing, I was telling, I think this program the last week we were discussing NAM as it was coming, and I was possibly slightly much more detailed at the time. I was slightly much more optimistic, if anything, than I am today. Do you know, for me, in my primary school, I formed the worldview of the repugnance of apartheid, the crudeness of history of slavery, the excess greed around excess capitalism, the dogmas of extreme communism, of one nation and everybody else without a bicycle, those kind of extremes, those dogmatic rather. I was quite clearly liberated to a worldview in primary school, one in which there's fairness, justice, equity, but conscious enough to know that there is this civic reality called nation states with their responsibilities. And by my lower secondary school, I had an idea of what roles of governments were. Governments for their people. Forget about even the other definition, for and by the people. But quite clearly that the nation state, what are the expectations? And I told you that's how I ended up joining U.P.C, meaning following Obote like mad, and I did so the right thing. Fast forward to where we are. If you look at what the Titus and Nehrus were thinking in 1961, for opting to say that let's not get wired by what was happening in Moscow, the difference, the conflicting difference between Warsaw Pact and NATO and the instruction from London and Washington. Let's focus on this. Actually, today, I don't know, ironically, By the way, we taunt Museveni. Museveni is actually an extremely bad example of it. But across the continent, I wonder who. I was telling another global network the other day that for the first time in a very long time, this continent has produced a leadership in the name of South Africa, and a leadership, therefore, under President Cyril Ramaphosa, to dare the Anglo-American West by taking a position on the question of the genocide and the untouchable Israel. That is, in my opinion, leadership. Where are the rest on this continent? Where are the rest?
Mr. Ochieno,
yes.
we have had several resolutions since the beginning of the war, in which what we could say the non-aligned countries that are in the non-aligned movement have voted against the U.S. position and the Western position on the question of Gaza.
Do you know, when you say that, you basically re-emphasize my point. If you look at the founding values and founding principles by these guys, it would have been the case that possibly by around the time we are being born, you know, the non-aligned movement would be singing in the ears and voices of every citizen, particularly in the developing economies. In Uganda, we would not be having privatization. In Uganda, we would not be having people from old rich Bunyoro and indeed old rich Acholi, you know, crying foul, meaning dubious deals being made by a group of people, some of who are actually grazers from where we have no clue, but actually being experts in oil control, working with dubious sharks from outside the African continent, exploring that. We would not be having that. Why? In part because the majority of the young citizens of this country would be saying no. Meaning we would actually have, if you like, an ideological narrative around the reality of nationhood and statehood, and part of the other program we're talking about. But I think before it came on air, about these things about ideology and independence. No, something got lost on this. So now, don't resolutions, you know, get passed at the UN Assembly? They do. Don't resolutions get passed at the AU summits? They do. But what are the solid foundations which people bang table simply say no? Those are the absent things.
Yeah, I think I agree with you to the extent to which we deal with the quality of the citizen in terms of civic knowledge or civic awareness, because up to now,
civic power and authority to influence. Yes.
If you're looking at the question of Gaza, the only procession that has happened in Kampala were Christian Pentecostals back in Israel. We have not seen students, unlike, for example, all over the world. There's a glaring lack of young people, for example, standing up for.
So now you're supporting my position.
Do we have freedom of expression
in
Uganda?
And that's my point.
No, but in this case, it wasn't even tested. Maybe the government would have let
the young people are blamed, eh?
No, maybe the government would have let young people stand up for Palestine. But in this case, it wasn't even tested because there was no civic awareness to stand.
Can I give information on the double dealers? The unfortunate part, whereas NAM was purely founded on ideological clarity, we have double dealers in the name of power retention.
True.
We claim to be non-aligned.
Yes.
During the day,
it's convenient, yes.
At night, we are doing deals. Gaddafi wanted to do this African thing, but our own people were the ones being used to fight Gaddafi. You know, we are trying to get money for power retention. We want to work with America because we know those who resisted America were overthrown. We ran to China to buy guns and Russia. So they are double dealers. There are even things we are not talking about. A lot of these African leaders are also arms dealers. The Wagner is here long ago. We are just talking of this man. I don't know whether he died or he's still living in Russia. But
because he died last year.
So the honesty to this non-aligned thing is actually not there. That's
Mr. Shed, as a conclusion.
So unfortunately, it has lost it. It has lost it completely and has lost it to double dealers. And actually,
Mr. Do you think that's the same problem with the East African
just to confirm to you, the person who's now going to take the chairmanship of non-aligned movement is taking it for convenience. Because if it was about the critical thinking of non-aligned movement, there has been no one on this African continent who's more of a nyampala to Anglo-America than Mr. Museveni. And that's official. So really non-aligned? Or
but
basically the double dealer? No, of course he does. But he
deals with Russia, he deals with Iran.
Indeed, I am trying to emphasize that. Under what circumstances does he deal with Russia? Under what circumstances does it deal with Anglo-America? No, the non-aligned movement was not about the creation of a block of countries that would cover themselves in an umbrella. They simply say that no, we would constructively engage with other sides when the focus is growth and development and enabling of our people. That is the point, and it's extremely important. And to the extent, therefore, and I was having a conversation, I think, with my old friend Comrade Wich, wherever he may be today, that part of the other thing was that, no, it does not necessarily mean, for instance, that you, Olaa, and I hope, thankfully, I hope it's not you, you do not grow with a conservative, right-wing leaning thinking of excess profit. So nothing stops you being capitalist leaning, if you, in theory, but does not, that's not the problem. So it's not either, and that's what I was trying to. It's not about the extremes, but it's about objectivity for which you're not entrapped on the either end. And for the moment, the leaders that we got are fundamentally terribly wrong people for that. And when we have NAM in Kampala, and we have NAM leaders, and we have most schools not involved, most institutions not involved, no public debate. I am president of Uganda People's Congress, and I'm not even an invitee on a side room because it's either in or no, it's actually shamefully shambolic. And to the extreme, therefore, that Kampala is now a war zone, that every traffic corner, they're armed, masked men ready to, I don't know, shoot who, as if we are coming from the bushes of Kabamba. That is really all about it. The detail, of course, are the dealers. Do you know what? In Nagongera, nobody has an idea what's going on, nor do the people who are campaigning and being jailed, basically simply because they want the tarmac from Nagongera Road, nor do they really have an association with this. The billions which are going for double deals and a few individuals. It's a shame.
Thank you for that rich critique covering a variety of cross-cutting issues. I'd like to come to you, Dr. Bireete. You've been listening to the critiques, but first thing is, do you join in congratulating Uganda for the non-aligned movement that we are hosting, the milestone?
I think the right time to congratulate was in 2019 when we won the bid.
Yes, actually.
So I think then you are a bit.
I'm a bit late.
4 years late.
Yes.
For the congratulations.
And preparation.
Yes.
Yeah, because actually those are status quo sides. So since then, because my brothers are amazing about the preparation. So what's happened in 2019 and today, and what are the deliverables that people can see? But anyway,
So why am I starting with 2019? What have we been doing in preparation for some of the comments that have gone through? We won the bid in 2019. We knew we would host NAM at this time. But just last week, people are planting plastic grasses, grass all over the town. There are potholes.
Plastic grass.
Yeah, just so it's not time for the congratulations. We need to see how have we done. I know that Munyonyo, where most of the visitors are held up, is a bit neat. Thanks to taxpayers' money that has been pumped in. I hope there will be value for that money after the meeting. So if a visitor uses Entebbe Airport, which is now, good thanks to the 5-year work, away from NAM, Croc Tower or Express Direct to Munyonyo, those are good roads. And they could be the only ones that we have in the country. So, but what is this NAM and what is in it? For me, the bigger relevance would have come from the preparation of nation states, the member states of NAM. Since its foundation in 1961, NAM used to be effective. NAM used to be a prestigious group to belong to because of the principles that it stood for, but also the leadership at that time. You are talking of the likes of Fidel Castro, you're talking of, Abdul Nasser. The leadership was really solid. So with the time, and that's how they were able to, for example, push back against apartheid, because those were some of the objectives. Look for the political rights in Latin America, look for the political rights in Asian countries, and enforce liberation and equality of races and nations, their biggest strength. But also at the time of Arafat and the question of Palestine, NAM was an authority. Even the seeming peace that we've been having in Palestine and the West Bank, was thanks to NAM. But so the question should be, when did NAM disappear from the global political negotiations? When did it make itself irrelevant, and why? So the characteristic of most of the 120 member states in NAM countries, except for a few that have really stable economies and stable democracies, majority are badly governed. Majority are part of the poorest nations of the world, highly indebted, high rates of corruption, high rates of human rights abuses. They don't attract respect at the international level. The bad thing with governance is that when you misgovern your nation and you get to the platform, international platform, to speak, everybody will be like, what is he talking about? So what is she talking about?
Yeah.
And that's the problem. That's the problem of NAM. They don't command respect. International law, is framed in such a way that to demand respect, you must be superior, you must be credible, you must be authentic. But 80% of NAM states, they speak and everybody's busy doing something else. They have the most voting power in the UN General Assembly. I know that part of the agenda is the UN reforms, climate change, the war, the Israel-Gaza war, and economic transformation. They have the voting bloc in the UN, but what have they influenced? The power of NAM in the previous years was that they could even stage boycotts. They would say that if you are selling guns to the apartheid regime in South Africa, don't import anything, don't export anything to the countries. They would put an embargo.
Yeah, and membership would be held to account. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what is this NAM capable of doing? We have the crisis in Gaza. Are they capable of putting an embargo on Israel? Or they want to go and get technology from Israel to suppress the freedoms of their citizens? So that's why the NAM today cannot make sense beyond the numbers and the gathering. The double standards. Can they collectively put an embargo to save the Palestinian people?
Wait and see.
Because as much as we are not a superpower economically, we are markets.
Yes.
We are viable markets.
And we have influence.
For commodities produced in the West. Can we put an embargo and say, fine, we can live on our command on the road, on the streets of Kampala. Don't sell your clothes here. Don't sell your phones. Don't sell your whatever, cars. That's what would make sense. What are we bargaining with? The modern world bargains with sanctions. Carrot and stick. You either listen, toe the line, or they sanction. What does non-aligned movement bargain with? Until we reach a time when we get back the embargo that the likes of Kwame Nkrumah and Abdul Nasser and the rest would do. Until we get back to that time to say that when Abdul Nasser gets up to speak, the world listens, because Egypt is an emerging power. Until the time we get to the likes of Nkrumah to say that Nkrumah, his only interest is not the independence of Ghana, but the liberation of Africa.
The whole Africa.
We have leaders here. Let me take an example, because I think we can't hide our heads in the sand. Look at Uganda, the next chairman for now in the 3 years. Look at our neighbors. As we talk today, the border between Rwanda and Burundi is closed. Are we neutral to negotiate as a chairperson of NAM, or we have a stand in even that minor conflict? We will have a stand. Look at Sudan, South Sudan. We were a peace guarantor of the process that has now collapsed and people are starting afraid. But we also had a side with Salva Kiir. So how do you negotiate and guarantee peace when you are partisan in that conflict? When you have taken a position?
I think part of the proceedings is that we are going to have negotiations on the Sudan problem.
But Sudan is not a member.
Sudan
he has even pulled out. They have not come.
Yeah, Sudan was trying to join, but now they are not in a position to join because their matters are. Nobody has a sovereign power per se. It's just a military junta in place. But we have a side in Sudan. The same because we have also on the sidelines of now the IGAD summit going on. IGAD has failed to function because of pettiness of leaders. IGAD was framed as an early warning mechanism for the Great Lakes and Horn of Africa. Early detection, early prevention of conflicts. But the leaders, the political leadership of IGAD takes position in conflict, and this makes it impossible for IGAD to function.
Sudan has pulled out of IGAD.
So this is the problem of NAM.
The Janjaweed was here.
Yes. I'm just giving an example of why NAM is not a viable entity. Look at NATO. For them, we compare NAM with the NATO. NATO has clear leadership under the US. And the Europe member states know that they have to take the line of NATO. You cannot take a position against NATO.
And they choose whom to admit.
Yes.
I think Turkey is not allowed.
But actually, interestingly, even as a part of the discussion at diplomatic level, I might just use a small example, that sometimes those of us who have had interactions with some of these, perhaps ambassadors and diplomats, you actually meet with them and someone will tell you that that would either be in contravention of an, or maybe alliance, or they will tell you maybe that will not pass for reasons A, B, C, D. Do our diplomats in this country and other places think like that? No, it's not. And so some of these are not impossible places to reach. That's why this question of leadership always in Africa around institutions are very, very important, particularly for you young guys.
So NAM has a crisis of public debt. Most of the member states are highly indebted.
True.
Is it one of the resolutions in the Kampala Declaration? Or are they getting a strategy for negotiation and cancellation of debt? But are they also getting a strategy to make their economies viable? Because they cannot live and depend on debt.
There's a recent trend of NAM members being attracted to the BRICS.
Again,
Plus.
another block.
What could be the cause for that?
Because the other bloc does not care about governance. The IMF and World Bank cares about governance, and the other people don't care about governance. The same applies to China.
Because now I think
we have the G77 plus China, which is part of that grouping. They don't care about governance and human rights. And that's why it's attractive for the authoritarian leaders to align with those, because nobody is going to question their leadership credentials.
Just to explain what she's saying, Brazil had elections last year. But by the time the elections were being announced, one of the candidates was already in the US, because if they announced when he was still at home, he would probably be imprisoned or killed. Of course, China, we don't talk about it, democracy there. So the only people who are maybe somehow democratic, but they don't have a lot of influence in the geopolitics of the world is South Africa and India. So that's why even BRICS, I don't see much that we're going to get out of it. It's just a group which is being mobilized by the Chinese and the other people to create another force of making deals, as he was saying.
Yeah, thank you very much. So when you look at those challenges, so this is what has bogged down NAM. For me, NAM can only rise, and there's an opportunity for NAM to rise. What is that opportunity? It is the Gaza-Israel conflict. If NAM is to recreate itself, it must recreate itself by achieving the independence of Palestine and the restitution and restoration of what has been damaged in the war. If they cannot do that, it's just another club for leaders.
I think that also plays in, because as the chairman, Uganda would have to directly deal.
We have to fold our sleeves and push back on that conflict. If NAM cannot push back on the Gaza conflict, forget about NAM. We have other, what could seemingly look like the low-hanging fruits. The Kampala Declaration is supposed to officially establish the platform for women. Women participation in NAM started being formalized in 2005, but it was not consistent. So you have 205, you have 209, Then last year and now, I attended the side meeting for the women to formalize.
So you are at least a beneficiary.
Oh. We are still on the sidelines because we are young skies and whatever. We remain in the pothole side of Kampala. So we are still on the pothole side, the dusty side of now.
You haven't seen the new flowers.
No, the plastic flowers. So if this is officiated in the Kampala Declaration, I saw the outcomes of the private sector forum. They are also saying they want a permanent, platform to coordinate trade issues and the private sector concerns. These are some of the low-hanging fruits that Kampala Declaration can establish and then be spearheaded by Uganda under the chairmanship, so that they have something to hand over beyond the shaking of hands.
Creating initiatives.
Beyond the shaking of hands, create and kill.
Yeah. Sarah, you talk about the handover.
Yes.
We are getting it from Azerbaijan. What are they handing over to Kampala? I was trying to check and I don't see anything.
No,
the only thing they are handing over to us is conflict. Azerbaijan now has a lot of conflict with Armenia. And right now they are 83 miles into Armenia. And therefore, it is now a conflict for NAM to resolve. The chairperson has brought here their conflict.
Yes, hand it over to the
when we were getting, Azerbaijan got it from, I think, Iran. What did Iran hand over to us? Before Iran, it was Venezuela. Venezuela. What did Venezuela hand over to us? Hugo Chavez and then later Maduro's problems in that place. I just think that Yoweri Museveni will also be handing over another conflict.
Dr. Bireete, could you conclude?
So as I conclude, it's not enough to say NAM has the numbers. There must be quality in those numbers. Once we don't have quality, the numbers alone are irrelevant.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bireete. And before we close the discussion today, I'd like to ask you a question, Honorable. We saw in local politics, opposition members, Honorable Chagulani and Dr. Besigye, choosing this time to make their voices known about service delivery issues, including the problem with the roads in Kampala. Do you think it's a good time to perform these acts of advocacy, or it's something that we need to first smile for this week, then next week we can go back,
First of all, I don't want to lose the point of I made at the beginning.
Yes.
We would have excuse for being panicked during the Chogam 17, 18 years ago. Not this time. And in terms of the face of Kampala, how we want it to look, our city, the Pearl of Africa, it's a matter which does not require any partisan approach. Good enough, the bigger part of Kampala, Mukono Wakiso, has been under even opposition leadership. My position has been that the cleanup we have done should not be for visitors. It should be for citizens. That's how Kampala should be. A pedestrian walkway is not a place where to sell food. Border should stop parking at where disabled should be passing and that kind of thing. So we should take it upon ourselves. You go to Rwanda. Borders are coexisting with the other people.
But organized.
They're very organized. So can we be intentional to say that Kampala this time round, Uganda used to be organized. I first came in 1983. Jinja, Entebbe, Kampala, organized. Actually, what should have surfaced at that airport, which was once the biggest in Africa, that from the airport, there are some steamers. You can go to Masaka, there are steamers. There is a train coming to Kampala. There is mass transport.
Can Uganda understand what you're saying, really?
That's what we should be exhibiting.
Tanzania has an electric train.
Tanzania, Magufuli has done it.
The part of the standard
Magufuli
gauge
handed
rail.
over to this lady.
Leave standard gauge rail.
Yes.
The other day they launched electric train from Dar es Salaam to Morogoro.
And new vessels on the water. Both on Victoria and the coast. New vessels. New vessels. So we have missed on that. The other point.
Before you go to the other point, Honorable talks about the pomp around hosting Chogam in 2007. For my thing, it goes back to the characteristics of these now member states that will glorify colonialism. Because they should have, ideally, they should have been more pomp around now than Chogam.
That's correct. That's an interesting point.
Yeah, but so this is, we glorify colonialism, we get excited with our former colonial abusers.
The Queen is coming.
Yeah.
So with the point I'm making, what I expected Kyagulanyi Besigye and others to do, to start Bulungi Wansi, not just for now, from now continuous. We should all be responsible to clean our city. We should all be responsible. When you see these structures which are on the road, when I came here in 1983, I didn't see any structure on a road reserve. On the entire road, there were tiled houses, almost 80 meters from the road. When you hear that the government of Uganda is losing a lot of money in compensation, we have approved these illegalities. When you hear that swamps, it is big people who have done it. So let's really, on this matter, we should be as it. But the other point I wanted to make, and I thank Doctor for touching it. You see, in international relations, I said it's about positioning and posturing to influence. To influence. Now, African countries, we are not permanent members of the UN. We don't sit on the Security Council. Is that what we are achieving by Africa hosting now? That is an agenda we are going to support. We have been saying we want to support SDGs. And one way how poverty has remained here and unemployment, the president says it for the last 38 years that we export jobs. He had even sworn that our oil will not go to the coast in crude form. But you can see how fast we are working on the crude pipeline to Tanga. So the issue of value addition, of saying that we shall not export to the North, America and Europe, our minerals, our crops in raw form, we should be coming from a NAM resolution. And remember I told you, the next event, the G77 plus 33, is more of a trade thing. It's economic, it's business, anchored. So if we got positions and we say as Africa, as East Africa, but as he rightly said, we are in court with Kenya on this fuel thing. Instead of putting energy to say, let us as East Africa, Great Lakes, now that Somalia is coming in, Sudan is there, DRC, let's have a refinery with finished product pipeline. But what started to bring us conflict with Kenya was that the Lamu pipeline was switched to Tanga. Yet we could have a finished product. We are dying for a crude pipeline. The balkanization of Africa, now that we say NAM was for decolonization. The balkanization in economic terms is fought by what we call interconnection. That the airlines must fly in, that the banks must move across nations, that the industries, we have East African railways and harbors, we have East African industries, that these boundaries. Recently, I was excited when Ruto said that he has removed visas for all African countries, but last week I heard he has changed it. So what we need is that joint venture. Because at the end of the day, the deals you are hearing coming to State House as a clearing house, they are individual deals. Those former State House boys, former PGB boys, and former MPs have already worked out the formula, and that's why we are getting these very expensive loans. But ideally, what we should be doing, for example, China can give you, I did research in Exim Bank more than 3 times, China can give you a seamless SGR in the whole of Great Lakes at the same interest rate. But they will not allow it because State House Uganda has somebody eating commission. State House Congo has somebody eating commission. State House, that's the problem. But me, I have studied it before they started doing it, 2005, 2007. That's when I got that information. So the airlines, why are we struggling with Uganda Airlines, Tanzania Rwanda Airlines? We had very functional East African Airways. And it was doing a very good job. So the problem is that every state house in this region is a clearing house. Remember I already told you the deals they do in the military things, the maneuvers, the arms trade, you know, keeping another government, even when it's not popular, in office at a cost. Now this money is not declared in any treasury, in a consolidated fund. These are deals. So the problem right now, the Wagnerism, whereby people are not in leadership to transform their communities. People are in leadership to increasingly assert themselves and become influential. And so whereas as an economist, we believe in integration, we want to have free movement of goods and services, we want this interconnection we are doing. It should not be that one person can decide what happens in Somalia, that is dangerous. So where I also want some reforms in NAM, we should not hide in sovereignty and non-intervention in foreign affairs for you to abuse human rights of your own country, for you to be a despot in your own country. So NAM leaders from the 70s, the Bokasas you've talked about, the Mobutu, took advantage of NAM to say, don't interfere in Congo's matters. But Mobutu was working for CIA, which killed Lumumba. So the double dealing point I was talking about is actually a problem. During that day, we are NAM. Who doesn't know? Any of these countries which has remained long, they are working under American satellites. They are using American security. They are using the budget which is not declared. They are the technology. They're using it.
Fighting
so
for America
the moment
in Somalia.
even these battles you hear, whereas we are saying the Cold War is over, we still have new forms of hegemonies. You know, we are talking about balance of power in the new world order. We call it the new international economic orders. Who has killed the cooperatives? Who has killed the Ugandan local industry in favor of multinationals? It is our leaders who are working for those countries. So we really need to engage.
So the problem is not working with other countries.
Yes.
It is with the principle.
We must reform. We must reform the NAM agenda to the challenges of the day, so that where it is necessary to say, Sudan, stop it. You can't be a Janjaweed yesterday and tomorrow you need to be glorified. We must have, it should be some kind of a peer review. That's why I was comfortable with the African peer review mechanism, whereby we say, if we come back together, can we be seen to move? The final point I wanted to make. The NAM is not static. 50, 60 years ago when NAM was formed, it was more of a club of the less developed countries. We say less developed, then middle, then we have the developed countries. The Chinese were very poor. When President Museveni took over here, Chinese university students demonstrated, saying communism had failed. At Xiangmin Square, there was a very big resistance and thousands of students were killed. But you see, they are now in the first world bracket. India has moved on. And that's the cause of the BRICS. Those who have already
moved on.
The Saudis, the Iraqis and the Qatars were very poor countries at that time. Actually, I have done more research with in Egypt. I've met the experts who were for NASA, who later was succeeded by Mubarak. When Uganda joined the IOC, the plan for the Arab world to get their food, everything was with Amin. So when they did this Kinyara Sugar Works, when you hear of IOC, when you hear of Kuwait Fund, when you hear of even this, what we are now going Islamic banking, they intended to do it at that time. The Egypt and fish ponds and this irrigation in Libya was supposed to start here. So we need to understand that these people have since moved. So it's no longer homogeneous. There are some members of NAM who have moved. So now when China is coming, this is now a new threat. China is also not coming as an old ally. China is coming as the owner of expensive loans, commercial loans, more than the World Bank concessional loans. China is coming to take control. I don't know why we chose to say we cannot produce uniform for our own schools and our army and shoes, and the import substitution policy, which we know in economics is the way to go. Instead, we are very comfortable to import from China. We are all become markets of China and paying a very high price. I think those are serious reforms we need to look at. Otherwise, we may just be accompanying the new colonizers. For me, I'm saying they are new colonizers. If we are not careful, we may be accusing NATO and America alone, when actually our own leadership is a problem, because they are double dealers. They will work with America if they can retain them in power. They will go to Russia and pick the arms. They will work with China. When America puts condition of democratization, to pick very expensive loans. So that's what we should really face.
Thank you very much, Honorable. And our time is fast spent for the day. Our dear guests, Honorable Dr. Mr. Ochieno and Dr. Bireete, thank you very much for your very informed opinions. Of course, firstly, remembering Honorable Cecilia Ogwal, who we lost today. Unfortunately, great words there, and we hope that more will come in terms of remembrance from the movement and from the party and from the general public as time goes on, but also regarding the non-aligned movement, kind of shaping the minds of our citizens, especially the young ones, as to what is supposed to be or what is expected and the issues around that. Thank you very, very much. To our dear listeners, thank you for following the discussion. It has been an in-depth one, and I hope that you're able to watch through, follow, share as we continue collectively on this journey of nation building. It was a pleasure hosting the show. I remain Okot Olaa. Thank you. Till next time.